Hello everyone, I hope you all enjoyed the music. This seminar is brought to you by iExplore Club. We're a nonprofit organization and we host seminars globally. The music I just played is called Yankee Doodle. It was a song written during the earliest time in American history. And it was related to our seminar today because today our teacher, Daniel Chen, will lead you through a journey of American history and he'll explore all the aspects of it. It's very interesting, so let's get started. Take it away, Daniel.
All right, thank you very much, Devin. Hi, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about U.S. history. I'm sure many of you guys have read about U.S. history before and have know a little bit of knowledge about U.S. history. But have you ever noticed that there are some of the things you don't know about history? And today we're going to talk about those things you might not know about it. And also, first of all, let's talk about the start of U.S. The start of U.S. is maybe 10,000 years ago. And there are people coming from maybe all over the world coming and live here. So as you can see, these are the people who live in North America 10,000 years ago. So that is the start of US. Then we're going to talking about in the early 17th century, which in that time, the British people began to colonize America. I think most of you know where's United Kingdom, right? That is where most British people are. It's in North Europe, and it's just like an island actually. So they come here, and they colonize here in this area. So as you can see, this is the whole U.S. map in this part, and here in the East Coast is where all of the people are colonized in. And it's also like New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and also Massachusetts in Boston is gonna be an important place for American people to having revolutions on. And also New York is the biggest city in the world, and Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. These are the places that they started to come in, and this is the place where they colonized it. And also, it's gonna start to expand. From 1607 to 1733, it started to expand. And they have established 3 colonies on the east coast of America. So they expand. So let's see this map, actually. This map, we can see that only a little bit, mostly on the east of the coast is where they colonized. But now, they start to colonize to Alabama, and they start to colonize through the west. So this is the expansion of colonize. And then the earliest representative institution in the world. So this is the earliest representative institution. So in July 1619, the Congress of Virginia was hold this thing in Jamestown, Virginia. So as you can see, this is the picture when they having their institution, when they having their meeting. Yes, and then we're going to talk about African American slaves. Actually, this is a problem until now, because when I think in the start of when they colonizing, it is very flourishing for getting many of those African American slaves to come into United States. So actually, it's like when U.S. people go to maybe Africa, they're like, hey, those people are very good. I think those people can be good slaves. And then they were just gonna take those people and go to United States to work. So yes, there are some, because there are labor shortage, so they have to take many of the African American people to come to US and maybe help them. But yes, actually, so mainly all of the African Americans are all slaves at that time, and they are not equal to maybe white people. So they are just like they don't have very much authority inside. And so actually we noticed that how things happen now, like George Floyd, that is the thing that which starts happening from here, because U.S. people are taking laborers from Africa and then come to here, and then now we cause many of those African Americans problems, maybe racist problems also. So this is African American slaves. As you can see, yes, they are just working. And then the first batch of American slaves were transported by the Dutch merchants, so to the Virginia. So as you can see, these are all of these African American slaves that comes to shipped it to United States, which is looks like it's very scary, but well, maybe in that time they don't have authority. They are not equal to the people, well, with other people, I mean. So this is the first batch from Dutch, transported by Dutch merchant and shipped it to the Virginia. So actually Virginia is also a very big country about American Revolution, actually. But in the future, we might gonna talking about more about Boston, because Boston is most revolution are. And also, this is my Mayflower Compact, which is kind of a law. It starts signing in 1620, and they agreed of some rules in the Mayflower Compact. Yeah, they agree. Basically, just agree rules. It's just like a law, actually. They just agree rules and make sure the country is making right. Yeah, so this is the laying the foundation in the future government. And we're talking about Harvard University, which this is the earliest university, I think, in US. Yes, so it is founded by local colonial legislation in 1636, which is a pretty old school. Actually, it built very early. And this is the mid-18th century. So in the mid-18th century, the U.S. hasn't been a country yet, because that time those colonies are still following George III, which is the king of United Kingdom that time. So their economy, culture, and politics are relatively mature at that time, which is pretty good. Well, they are going to be flourish in the future, but right now just colonized. And they don't want, because now they are a class citizen in UK. But I don't think anybody not very sure about if anybody knows what is a second class citizen. Like what is the authority of second class citizen? So let's do an example. For example, let's talking about Puerto Rico. Has anyone heard about Puerto Rico yet? I think most of you do. It's a island, I think at the south of US, and it is founded by US at that time, I think in the 18th century, and then they colonized, they make government on that area. But now they are still second class citizen in Puerto Rico. So in Puerto Rico, they cannot vote for a president. Like the president election in 2020, they can't vote because they don't have the authority to do it. But the first class citizen can do that. For example, in the mainland of US, they can do that because they are the first class citizen. But in the Puerto Rico, they are second class citizen, but it's actually not have many authority than the first class citizen. But I mean, they are still asking for US to be as official state of America, but the government of the United States doesn't answer Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico is now still not a official state, but is captured by United States, and it's ruled by the United States. So this is how second-class citizens do. So they don't have the authority of, as the first-class citizens, because first-class citizens have the most authority in that country. So then it starts the French-Indian War, and it starts from 1756 to 1763, and those colonized people have like they and friends together to fight with British. So as we can see the map of how they are fighting with, so mostly just UK fighting with French. Well, they have like, I think this war is like 7 years. It's just this North America just part of this war. I think this war also happened in India, also happened in South America also, I think in the part of Brazil, and also happened in Africa, I think so. Yeah, and also happened in Europe, actually. So France and UK are just fighting with the, just having wars. And then the Treaty of Paris make them make the war end. So as you can see, France gave large amount of place to Britain and Spain. So this is part of US, as you can see, and this part is where Mexico is, and this is Guatemala, and this part is South America, and this part is Canada, which here I think is the borderline, and yeah, here's US, and it's also expand to in the south, in the west. It starts to expand in the west, and then in the future we're gonna talking about how they expand to in here, the California, and how they expand to Washington. We are gonna talking about this in the future. And first of all, we can see that Spanish have most of the place, like and here is where British people have, and yeah, that's how that time how North America have been separated. And because of that, because of what we just talking about, those colonized people have allied with France and to attack the British. So British aren't very happy. They are maybe even sad. So they prohibit those colonists from expanding more western. So now this is the United States, and here, and they really want to expand to here, to California, to Washington, but George III prohibit. George III don't want them to expand more. So because they are angry, because they are angry with the war with French. So George III just don't want them to do that, because they want to avoid conflicts, and they want to increase the military spending. But then at this time the people in this in the United States very want to expand to the west. So as you can see, here is now now what's that time the United States is, and then because they want to expand, they are going to expand from here maybe to now we expand to California, to the west already. But in that time, we have the Americans population, they actually very want to expand to the west. So they oppose George III. And the strongest opponents, which we can see, are George Washington and Franklin. So as we know, George Washington is the first president of the United States. And Townshend Acts. So this act is basically just not prohibit, but just make sure Americans don't expand. So in 1767, it includes 5 articles, like it includes 5 points. So involving the taxation to glass, paper, and tea, which they are gonna, it's just not, so the colonized people are not satisfied with this law. So they're starting to fight. So first fight is on Boston Massacre, which is between British soldiers and civilians. And it results in 5 civilians being shot dead and 6 injured. So this is the severest thing on that time. So you can see this has happened in Boston. So this are their first revolution, their first action actually. And then Intolerable Acts, it started in 1774, and those took away the autonomy of Massachusetts, and many of the rights for the colonized people were gone. So as you can see, this is the place when they're having fights with soldiers. So as you can see, these are the colonized people, and these are the soldiers from Britain. So they fight against each other because the colonized people doesn't agree with the act, the law from here. So the cause of independence. So that is when they started to talking about independence, and that is how independent law comes up. So in September 5, 1774, the First Continental Congress decided to terminate trade with Britain, and they don't want to accept the Townshend Acts, so which means this one. So they have taxation of glass, paper, and tea, which it has been protest, anything like that. No, they are not gonna use this act. In fact, they are not gonna follow with Britain. So also at that time they prohibited any thing that's made by Britain. And then it's coming up battles of Lexington and Concord. So this is the first independent war of U.S. So armed conflict between British Army and the colonized people for American on April 19, 1775. And then the Second Continental Congress was also held by this year in Philadelphia. And now we start to talking about Declaration of Independence. So in this July the 4th, they have their independence coming up. So that may set US is a new country, and this country will not gonna follow any rules of Britain. So now the US is officially a country. So as you can see, new country is independent and separate from Britain. So as you can see, this is the Declaration of Independence. And also, after that, they're also gonna make laws. So which we're gonna talking about Constitution of the United States. This is actually a series of laws approved in Philadelphia in 1987, September the 17th, and also approved by 13 states owned by the United States. So when United States formed, this is when the United States, as an official country, the territory of United States at that time. And then they started to expand Louisiana Purchase, which they buying territories from this part and from France actually, because in that time France captured not Spain anymore. France captured this part of land, so U.S. want to buy the land. So U.S. spent $15 million US dollars actually to buy the lands at that time. So they did buy the land at that time, and then that's what we see now for US actually. And following up to American Civil War is in the period of when Lincoln takes the president, and there are several in the southern part, because mainly, as we can see the map, in the north mostly are like freedom people in the north, but in the south they are mostly slaves. So mostly they are slave states in the south, which most famous slave states I think is in Georgia, in Alabama. There are many of these slaves living in this part. And yeah, and then because I mean racist is still that on that time a very difficult problem to solve. Even now, the racist problem is also a difficult problem to solve. I mean, it's just an important problem for U.S. because U.S. it is difficult for both African American and maybe freedom people or white or government to solve this kind of racist problems. So in that time, they are not equal. So slaves live in south, and there are freedom people live in north. So they are not living together. So then they are having wars. So there are many of the states announced to separate from the United States. So actually, this part mostly, it's not United States anymore. This part separates from United States because of the not equality problems. So as you can see, now the Civil War starts to begin from here, and this is what's happening. This is the picture of what's happening for the Civil War. The war happened in 1861 to 1865, which is like mainly 5 years. After Civil War, and the Congress passed the 13th to 15th amendments to the Constitution. So now formally abolishing slavery. So that means no slaves anymore. And the United States entered a period of Reconstruction. So this is the amendment of what they signed. So after they signed this document, there's no more slavery. Well, I think it's only 13th or 15th amendment document here, not all of them. But well, after the signing of the document, the slaves are free. We can't call them slaves after that because they are not actual slaves after that period. And also, President Lincoln has been killed during a speech on that time in 1865, which is on a speech of, I think it's on a speech of about the Civil War. And then after that, the United States become prosperous, and they have more economy, and they start to have more works. So as you can see, the U.S. government encouraged people to immigrate to the West and to maybe to build some railways. As we can see, the Pacific Railroad is the connect from to the West, from the East to the West, and it's a very good railroad. And there's a thing is that most of the, not most, but many of the laborers in this road constructions were Chinese labor, which at that time in China, I think it's the Qing Dynasty. The Qing Dynasty is like the falling part on that time, and then that time the United States found Qing dynasty, and they asked them like, hey, you want to come to US? We have good land. We have we can do many things to support you guys. So then many people come to US and help US to build railroads. So this, well, many constructions, but this is one of the constructions. And then and then after that, yeah, I think after that, railroad constructions, U.S. has banned people from coming from China at that time. So after that, they think it will decrease of their GDP, their economics. So after that, they just want Chinese people to go away. And then that means like there are many of the Chinese laborers go back to China maybe, and they are just a little bit. I think there are just 20 people in US at that time, because of the bans from the US, and no more laborers coming, no more Chinese laborers coming US in the future. Well, not in now, but I mean that time actually. So, well, that's a pretty sad thing. And during this period, the US has also become an international participant. So first of all, we're gonna talk about Spain-American War, which is the war for US and Spain, which US win the war, and they also occupied Cuba. And also another very famous war is Philippine War. So Americans killed a large number of Philippines actually on that war, because after that war, most of the Philippines are ruled by U.S. government. Maybe they have to go to concentration camps to do something. So actually their life is pretty hard at that time. So I mean, until now, the Philippines I think now Philippines are still doesn't very like American that much. I think so, because due to this history. So now Philippines they are good, but I don't think they do love US too much. So after this war, the US become famous, and yeah, it's conquered a large number of Filipinos on that time. And then the Great Uprising on that time, 1957 to 1958. So there are national railway workers strike coming up because of the wages for workers, because there are many low wages and the workers are not satisfied with that wages, and they just having protests. So as we can see, this is when when the Great Uprising comes up, they just having protests and with maybe the National Army. And then after that time, so yes, because it's finally suppressed by the Federal Army. So after that time, the World War began. So the First World War is actually not very damaged in US. Is suffered just a little bit, and they increase its prestige due to this exclusion. So at that time, American is fighting with Germany. Not American only, but many countries fighting with Germany and other countries actually. So this is how the World War I happened in this time. And also the prohibition area. In this time, they are prohibit alcohols. So they are just stopping import or export of or sale of alcohols. So now that in that time, illegal alcohol is become popular in that time. So those scammers are having big business by doing this illegal alcohol. Because some people argue this, and some people think that it's not that simple to just stop export import alcohols, because they think that it is because of the World War One. As we know, America at that time is fighting with Germany, and Germany is where those alcohols come from. And there are many German American people selling alcohols in US. And maybe because of this, US government thinks that, oh, they can't do that because we and Germany are enemies. So we should stop them for getting more money, selling more alcohols. Maybe because some people are arguing that, maybe because of that, the US government stop to transport or to manufacture, to sell, to import, to export alcohol. So that is what mainly happening. So as you can see, that people just throwing alcohols away. So what I just talking about, just many of the people are arguing it's because of German, it's because of World War One. And then I'm gonna introduce a very famous people. I think if you have learned U.S. history, you should be knowing this people: Franklin Roosevelt, Democratic politician and the 32nd president of the United States. It's a Dutch American, and it is it's the longest president, I think so, in United States. Has 4 terms. So it starts he born from 1882 to 1945, but I think he started to having president in 1926. I think so. I think in that time, in between the 1920s and the 1930s, and Franklin started to serving as president, and he did for 4 terms. And then after that, the U.S. have the law, which is you can't do more than twice. So as we can see now, I think the president are only 8 years now in U.S., not more than like 13. Because I think Roosevelt do more than 10 years of the president for 4 terms. So I mean, now we can't do that because of the law, because of Congress making that law. No one can have president more than 2 terms. And there, Roosevelt's New Deal. So the price of agricultural products is continuing to fall at that time, and the industrial profits are increased very big, increase a large amount, and economy is prosperity at that time. So it might be a golden time for US at that time, because I mean, just Roosevelt did a very good job on ruling that country. It's a legend, I think so. It's a legend in the United States. It's a very famous person. But also there is also a very famous person called John F. Kennedy, which I don't have that PowerPoint, but I'm just gonna talk about a little bit in the after we talking about racism question. So the Great Depression. The Great Depression is just economy comes down, the fall of economy. So in that time, the severe global economy recession on that time before the World War II, and bank run happened very usual this time. So as you can see, this is a photo which they are poor, because this is a photo called my grandmother. So like many people are just migrating to other places, because I think on that time there's also a problem called Dust Bowl, which the farmers can't grow any crops at that time, especially for New Mexico. in New Mexico, farmers cannot grow any crops at that time because of the storm, because of the dust. So they have to do something else. The government needs to have ideas to make sure agriculture goes very safe. So at that time, Dust Bowl is also a very big problem. Agriculture is also a very big problem. I think agriculture is also a problem now in U.S. because I mean, especially in the West, it's just a lack of water. So I mean, not very. They don't have too much water on it, and I mean it's just hard to grow crops in, I think, in the West. I mean now in New Mexico, I think still is a hard time to growing crops. And the Great Depression, which is to increase government intervention in the market economy. And while the New Deal does not effect very good, does not fully recovered until World War II. And now we're going to talking about this World War II. So this is the Allied powers and the Axis powers that are having wars together. So first, USA in the neutral position on that time, but after Japanese attacked, after they being attacked by the Japan, the United States started to join the aliens to join this part and fight with the Axis powers. But well, actually, US doesn't did a very good job on that. I think so, because first they didn't start to having wars on Europe. They starting to have wars on Africa first, and then they come to Italy, and then they goes on fighting with Germany or other Axis powers. So they not so first they didn't fight they didn't fight in Europe first. They fight Europe after they done with Africa. So after that, the Italy, because originally Italy is a part of Axis power, but after the United States conquered Italy, the Italy started to become an allied powers. And then this is the start of time when Germany crashed, Hitler crashed. So because of the Japanese attacked, there are executive orders for that. So as you can see, there are many of the Japanese people in the West starting to maybe migrating to the East, or they have to do what we call they starting to go into concentration camp to work because of the orders. Some people say that it's also a racist problem because they think that Germany, because we also American having wars with Germany on that time, but American didn't have any orders with Germany, and Germany doesn't go for the East Coast. I mean, East Coast, there are many German people actually, but in the wartime, American doesn't do anything with Germany. So, but they only do with Japan. They don't do anything with Germany. So, some people think this is also a racist problem. And yeah, the executive order, just moving all the Japanese out of West. So this is in the concentration camp. And World War II, well, it's also starting to become most costly war in the history, and there are a large number of jobs created in that time, especially for the women. So as you can see, this is a job. There are many women are doing job at that time. And nuclear weapons. After that, Japanese just forced to surrender because of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing. So, I mean, Japanese forced to surrender. Cold War. The Cold War began with United States and Russia, and the Soviet Union at that time is equal to the United States, and United States represents capitalism and liberal democracy, but Soviet Union represents communism and tent economy. So at that time, also we are also communism in mainland China, and so USSR and China is fighting with well, not fighting, but not actual fighting on that time. So Korean War is the first war. I think it's the first war we have with U.S. It's the war between North Korea and South Korea, and the U.S. support South Korea, and China and USSR support North Korea. And in 1953, the war ends, and now we can see North Korea and South Korea on our map. And for Guatemala, I think this is also a little topic. So Mr. Guzman, which is also, he also opposed U.S. at that time. So he made a land reform law, which is all the United States fruit company was confiscated and allocated by the farmers of Guatemala. And on that time, America was very unsatisfied with this. So they start to attack Guatemala, and then at last the Guatemala government failed. So Cuban Missile Crisis, and this is also a severe problem between U.S. and USSR, which there are many political and military crises between U.S. and USSR and Cuba, because USSR is deployment for missiles in Cuba. So actually, before what we call 1962, U.S. and Cuba had a very good relationships at that time. But I think after that, after USSR coming up, U.S. and Cuba have not they doesn't have diplomatic relationships anymore. I think so until now. I think a little bit relationship, but not too much. And Americans are still enemies with Cuba. And the civil rights movement. This is also what we're talking about, racism question. So there are many African American civil rights. So there are many African Americans that doesn't feel they have the rights, so they need to have protest, and they want rights. They want equal with white people or maybe other kind of people. So Martin Luther King is an icon of that war. So in that war, Martin Luther King has many speeches about the equality of African American and white. So the Vietnam War, it started from 1955 to 1975. It decided, because U.S. decided to against China, against communism from expanding. So that's why U.S. go into this war, because they think that USSR and China expanding their powers. So they enter this war, but at last, I think U.S. and South Vietnam failed at this war. This is the Gulf War. And during this war, United States successfully defeated Iraq and imposed economic sanctions on Iraq at that time. And then in 1991, the U.S. becomes the only superpower in the world after the collapse of Soviet Union. So we know that after the Soviet Union, there are many countries have raised up, like Kazakhstan, and there are many countries on the I think on the west of China. Yeah, they just rise up. They don't care of the USSR anymore. They separated from Russia. So then we're talking about 9/11. So which this is also a attack from the terrorists from Afghanistan. Yes, for Bin Laden. So Bin Laden controlled this attack, and the World Trade Center has just crashed in New York. So as you can see, this is Mr. Bush and his wife have looking at the place when that the Trade Center has been crashed. So this is like a museum actually. And then we're talking about Afghanistan war. So the Afghanistan war is a war because of the 9/11. Yes, because of the 9/11 attacked by the Bin Laden, the U.S. Starts to fight against the terrorists. So, and also at that time, they feel that China is has the strongest power opposed to the U.S. at that time. But then, after this 9/11 happens, and China also supports U.S. to fight with the terrorists, and then U.S. doesn't think that China is a strongest power opposed to them anymore. But now they do. They come back. I mean, Trump come back, and Trump thinks that China has inequality trade with U.S. So at that time, the Afghanistan war, they just fight with Taliban and Bin Laden actually. So in 2001, they fight it with the Taliban's terrorists. And also the Supreme Mortgage Crisis, which is in 2008, which caused the United States fall of the economic recession. So after Obama took that place, the U.S. economy slowly recovered, because before that time in 2008, I mean, it should be starts from the 9/11. The economy of the United States began to crash, and then and on that time, the economy of the United States was very bad. And then after Obama took that place, it began to slowly recovered. But the U.S. Have many debts, grow from 12 trillion US dollars in 2009 to nearly 20 trillion US dollars in 2017, which we can see that in the United Nations now, so because they have to pay the fee of the they have to pay the fee of they are a member fee of the United Nations, but United States doesn't pay that fee, and now I think the United Nations starting to like because the United Nations wants U.S. to have the fee and give it to them, because U.S. has the most a large amount of fee to the United Nations. And that's all. And also I want to talking about that's all for my PPT. And also I want to talking about the George Floyd problems now, because now as we can see, this is also a problem now for the civil rights. I mean, because most of Black people, I mean African Americans, they think that they doesn't get the rights, but now they still think so, and now they caused protests. I mean, because from the record in news, I think now I think in 2 months before, it has the most biggest protest ever than before. So it is bigger than this protest, because this protest is I think it's not very strong than now the protest. So now the protest is very strong, and I think I don't know if it is black people, but some people create a little bit area in Seattle at 2 months ago, and they called that area Chad, which they are not saying this part is not a part of U.S. So this is also a problem, one problem of civil rights in now. And yes, so I mean, racism is always a problem in the U.S. As you can see from the from here, African American slave to maybe we called Japanese parts, I think so. Yeah, and I think Chinese about the Chinese labor, what I just talking about, also have a little factor, have a little bit of racism thing. Yeah, and also Mexican also have kind of racism thing because it's the same as China. They come to work, and then the U.S. said no, you can't work anymore, and those Spanish people just gone on that time. This is a little bit of knowledge. So from the World War II and also German, this is also it was a kind of a racism question, because what I just talking about, German sell alcohols and they just ban alcohols, and then they also have a law which is no alcohol less than 21 or 16. I think I don't know, but they have a law until now about this. Yeah, so this is also a this is Japanese, also a kind of a racism question. This is also one. I mean, yeah, should be on. Yes, this one is also civil rights. It's also a problem of racism. Until now, Americans have many racism problems on their own. And that's all for today. Thank you guys very much. And any questions? Devin, you can take it away.
All right. Thank you, Daniel, for that amazing lecture. I hope you guys all learned something about American history. I personally learned a lot from it, like the terms of FDR and how he changed America, and also the law that made after it, and how the alcohol ban was related to Germany, as Daniel said. That was really interesting. All right, so that's all I want to say. If you guys have any question, you're free to ask, and if not, we will just end the meeting. Thanks again to Daniel.
Yeah, and also and we also have many, not too many, but we also have, I think we also have seminars per week, mainly on the weekend, many held on the weekend now. And if you guys want to join, you are welcome to join the other meetings. And very thanks for people who joined today and listened to my seminar. And thank you guys. If you have any question, you can write them down on the comments below, or you can, if you have questions in the future, you can ask. Maybe you can go in the chat, and people will contact. I think the